Okay, in this short video, we're going to walk through how to create a simple NodeJS server on using Visual Studio Code on whatever environment, Linux, Windows, doesn't matter. This will be platform independent as far as this approach, but it should be the same, pretty much the same steps regardless of which operating system you happen to be using. So first thing is the assumption is you already have Node installed. And I'm also showing you here on the screen here that I'm actually already logged into a folder within Visual Studio Code. So just to confirm whether or not you have Node installed correctly, what you can do is just type in node version -- version to confirm the version number. So if this comes back with a version number, then you should be good to go. This will have everything that you need. If you don't have a terminal window open, you can obviously create one by selecting new terminal here. Okay, so in order to create a server, we're going to do a couple things. One is we need to create a new file in our folder and give it a JS extension, such as I'm going to call mine server.js. Okay, and that'll get us started. So that is so the naming convention for Node applications is JS, which typically stands for JavaScript, because Node essentially sits on top of the JavaScript language. So the first thing is we need to use a built-in module that comes with Node called HTTP. So this is a built-in module. It provides functionality to create HTTP servers and clients, making it a fundamental step for creating web-based tasks in Node.js. Then we need to set up a couple things. We're going to set up a constant here, and we're going to call that constant port, and we're going to give it a port number. So a port number is just simply within IP, you obviously have to have ports. All the traffic goes across the port. So when you have TCP traffic, think of it as like a channel on, if you're thinking like a radio station tuning to a channel. When you have a server, that server can have many different channels that it's able to support. So we're saying that we want this server to be listening on channel 3000 or port 3000. Okay, it doesn't matter what port number you use. The one thing you want to keep sure of is make sure you use a port number that isn't already in use. And so for the most part, any port numbers above 10,024 are typically fine. So port number 3000 happens to be one of kind of the more common port numbers for testing Node applications. 8080 is another one you might see. 5000, anything above 1024 is perfectly safe. The problem you might run into with the smaller ones, if you go with a lower number like 80 or 443, those are typically already being used by applications. Okay, so we're going to start with port 3000. That's going to be the port number we're going to use here in a second. Then what we have to do in order to set this up is we need to create a server, and we're going to use a function within our HTTP module called create server. And the way it works is it accepts a callback function, and it's kind of an interesting pattern here, but this is a common pattern for how to create asynchronous callbacks within a Node application. Okay, so what we're saying here is that this is defining the function that's going to be executed anytime a request comes into our server. And the function has two parameters that are going to be present: REQ, which is short for request, and RES, which is short for response. Okay, so what we're talking about with web applications is that we know that they are a request response protocol, meaning we send a request, we get back a response. And these two parameters of this function are where that data is going to be coming to and being sent back from. Okay, so after that, we're going to go ahead and put in our call to send back the data to the server. So what we're going to do there is we're going to come in here and we're going to use our response, RES, and we're going to say end, and we're simply just going to send back hello world. Okay, and we'll go ahead and set that back there. And now what happens is anytime a request comes in on whatever port we're specifying here, we'll do that in a second, when a request that comes into our server, it's going to respond with the text hello world. And that's simply what we're setting up there. So now what we have to do is we need to set up our server to listen on the port that we just created. Okay, so the way we do that is by calling our server object that we just created on line 5 and calling the listen method on there. Okay, and it takes a couple parameters. First one is the port that we are going to listen on, and that's going to use our variable or constant from above. And the second thing is our function. Again, this is a callback function, and this is the function that will get executed anytime a request comes in. Okay, so what we're doing here, I'm sorry, take that back. This is the function that gets called when the server is first initialized. So here all we're simply going to do is we're going to just console out a log message to say the server listening on port, and we're going to go ahead and put port number here. Okay, so we'll see our message here for whatever port we're happen to be listening on. So when the service first starts up, it's just a way for us to see something on the screen so we can actually test out and make sure our server is working correctly. So that's it for our code. Now the next thing we have to do is let's go ahead and execute it. So we're going to make sure we save it. And so just very important, make sure that when you're running your application and trying this out, that you don't have any unsaved changes. Sometimes I know that gets people when they first start. Make sure you save everything. If you see a number here, that's telling you the number of files that are currently unsaved. So anything other than, and if you see a blue 1 or 2, just make sure you save your application first using the file menu or Command S or Control S to save it, just to make sure that everything's been saved. Once we've done that, we can come down here to our terminal window and we can start our server. So what we're going to do that is we're going to take node followed by the name of the file. In our case, it's server.js, and I'm going to hit enter. Now, once I do that, I'll see my message that I have from line 10 here. So simply letting us know the server's listening, and it's waiting, right? So it's waiting for traffic or activity to come across that port. So in order to test that, we're going to bring up a second window. And the way I'm going to do that is by either going to the menu here and say new terminal, or the little plus sign here will do the same thing. So I'm going to hit plus, and I'll see that I have a second window. I can kind of navigate between the two just like that. So I'm going to go over here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run curl. And curl is just a utility to try out your URLs through the command line. So if you don't have that installed, you probably want to get that installed. But I believe for the most part, if you're on Linux, it's already pre-installed. And I believe even on Windows and some of the other operating systems, it's also pre-installed. So you shouldn't have to install it first. But if for some reason you run curl and you don't get a response, or let's see if there's a version here. Yeah, so I have it installed. If you get an error message that says it's not installed, you may need to install it first. But typically it's there. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to run curl. And we're then going to give it our server. And we're going to test everything using localhost. And localhost simply means this host. So localhost is just kind of as a de facto URL for meaning this particular machine, okay? Rather than trying to reach out typically like we do to another server, we're saying, hey, we're going to look directly on this server for something running on port 3000. Okay, the port number is followed after the colon. So if you follow that, the second, what you see here after the colon is actually the port number. So as long as this matches what you have up here, then it should be able to reach our server. So if I run this command, I should see that I have my hello world here. There it is. So it did respond back with my message. So therefore I have successfully tested that that message has come through. If I go back up here, and I'll see the server is still listening, so I can continuously run that command. If I just hit the up arrow, in here, I can just keep running it, and the server is going to keep responding with hello world. All right. If I want to clean this up a little bit, I can do a couple things. Let me go back in here, and I'm going to go back to my server. To stop your server, you can hit Control C. Okay, so that'll stop the server from running. And now I can go in here and make some code changes. So first thing I want to do is I want to put a /n here so that we get a new line character. And then I'm also going to want to put in some additional log messages so we can kind of see some other cool data. So when I come up here to my server, and in addition to sending back as a hello world, as a response, I am also going to want to be able to look at the actual request header. So whenever a request comes in, headers data is sent with that request. And the headers have a lot of additional metadata that you need, that the web server may need or may want to interrogate. For example, we talked about methods, post, get, put, and delete, right? So that would be the method. So if we want to kind of interrogate the request and see all the other data that might have been sent with it, like authorization headers and other things, we can reach into the request variable and go get the headers out of there. So I'm simply going to log all that information to our server anytime a request comes in. So let me go ahead and save that. All right, so make sure that's saved. And I'm going to rerun my server again. Server is still listening on port 3000. I'm going to go to my second window, and I come down here, and I'm going to run that same curl command again. And now I get my hello world. But if I go back over here, I can see that now I've also written out some additional information. So this is the header that was sent. That is what line 6 gave me. Line 7, where I'm looking for the host, simply what host was it trying to reach. That's what line 7 gave me. Here is the request. So it was a GET request. That was the method. And last, I was just querying off of the root. So that's why I see a /. So the header information and all the other details came back. If I want to, I can even try and see how this would look if this were not a GET request, but instead if I did it as a POST request. And the way you do that is by doing a -x followed by the other method. In this case, I'm going to say I don't want you to do it as a GET request, which is what the default of a curl request happens to be. If I want to do it as a POST instead, I can use the -x, uppercase X, and then it's going to respond the same way on the client side. There's no difference there, but if I go back and look on my headers, you'll see that this particular request came through as a POST and not a GET. Okay, so we're kind of demonstrating how we can communicate to our server, we can interrogate the request, we can send back data using the response object. We can also record information and log that information. Okay, so hope you found this useful. And if you like what you saw here, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel for other tips and tricks. Thanks.